Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining in the session number 4 of our series, which is Network Security from Scratch. And I hope you have enjoyed sessions before this session. And believe me, the knowledge of those sessions are going to be very, very important in understanding, if you want to understand remaining session of the series. Okay, so the good part is all the recordings are already there on YouTube, and I will be uploading them on the SharePoint also. So wherever you are comfortable, just go and watch it. Okay, having said that, let's see what is the agenda today. So terminology, although I'm not big fan of them, but those are important, because if you want to speak these network security concepts to somebody else, right, you need those common terms. So we will be introducing some terms today. Those are going to be important. Then we are getting a lot of questions on the fact that how these shared keys are exchanged between a sender and a receiver, or the source or the destination, right? The key could be anything. The key could be your public key in case of asymmetric encryption. The key could be your secret key, right, in case of symmetric encryption. How these keys are exchanged, although you might have some information about the public key, because when we were sending the certificate, the public key was there. So you get some idea that how this public key is exchanged, but we haven't discussed that if we want to do the symmetric encryption, how the secret key is going to be exchanged over that unsecure medium, which is your internet. We are going to talk about it, right? Now, I was planning to showcase you or demonstrate you what happens when we go to real HDFC Bank site. Is it actually it is going to give us the certificate, right? But I got to know that it is really, really important to make you understand the concept of intermediate security. Certificate authority. And this was the question asked by somebody in the yesterday class also. So we have included this concept because this is again important in understanding what actually happens when you go to talk to HDFC Bank on internet, right? Whatever we have learned from last 3 sessions, whatever we are going to learn in this session, we are going to see everything in action today. Okay, so let's see everything in action after understanding the concept of certificate authority or intermediate certificate authority, I would say. Then I still know that there is a lot of confusion regarding confidentiality versus authentication. I know that, right? And I'm again saying coffee is must here, because what we are going to do now, we are going to compare confidentiality with authentication. What key you use where, right? Sometimes I say public key to encrypt, sometimes I say private key to encrypt. What is the difference, right? We are going to discuss it. And now, I really doubt that we are able to combine all the concepts together, because our goal was that we had the security puzzle. We have divided this puzzle into 4 parts. We understood confidentiality. We now know pretty well integrity, and after today's class, you will be pretty much comfortable in concept of authentication also, right? Non-repudiation, believe me, it is not required now, but we will cover it later. But if you combine CIA, you are going to get the complete picture of security. Okay, so let's see whether we are able to do that. Otherwise, we will do this on Monday. So let's move towards our first board. Agenda is done. Let's move to our first board, and here we are. Let's introduce some terms now. Okay. So, as I mentioned in our last class, that when this HDFC Bank server came online or on internet, right, he has done some pre-work. And what is that pre-work? It has gone to certificate authority with some of its document, right? and the certificate authority has signed this document, and that is why HDFC Bank server was able to get the certificate, right? It was as simple as that. And what certificate authority was doing, it is taking the hash out of this value, encrypting the value with its private key, and then creating the signature, which it puts back onto the certificate file. This process is not manual, guys. Although if certificate authority wants some documents, he can ask for it, but you can generate this request of generating the certificate online also, and we call this as certificate signing request, CSR. So whenever you see this term CSR, certificate signing request, the meaning is you are sending the request to certificate authority so that it can sign a certificate for you, right? Now, you also know that to verify the certificate, whatever this HDFC bank server got from the certificate authority, if Miss Anjali wants to verify the certificate, she is going to need one thing, and she is going to need the public key of certificate authority, which is this value M here, right? How she is going to get it, right? We will be discussing that in next board, but what actually we call this term as a certificate which contains the root, which contains the public key. And you all know that HDFC bank server, whenever it sends this certificate to you, it contains the public key, right? To verify this certificate, which is signed by a certificate authority, you need something at the Anjali side, which we call as a root certificate. And what is this root certificate? This root certificate contains the public key of certificate authority. It is as simple as that. Because at the end of the day, Anjali wants that public key, which was part of this root certificate, to verify whatever HDFC bank server is sending, right? So we call this certificate as root certificate, although we are going to see some intermediate certificate also. But let's remember this term. You are going to need the root certificate of the certificate authority, which is actually signing those certificates. Now, when HDFC Bank gets this certificate from the certificate authority, this certificate, this is for their server, and that is why we call this certificate as server certificate. Maybe you can identify as user from a certificate, and that is where the term user certificate comes into picture. But now, because HDFC Bank server wants a certificate for its server, so that whenever anybody on the internet comes to this guy and ask for the certificate or just do a hello, they are going to send the certificate back. And this certificate is known as server certificate because it is identifying HDFC Bank server. So we learned just three terms: root certificate, certificate signing request, server certificate, and certificate authority. You all know. Apart from that, we all know few more concepts. We know now public key, private key. We know symmetric, asymmetric encryption. We know shared key. We know hashing. We know some things in confidentiality, right? All these terms. So with these terms, actually, you can now start talking with somebody who knows security, right? Because now you can talk in their term. Because now you also understand security. So these are the terms which are really, really important whenever you go out and talk security with anybody, right? And the remaining term we are going to learn as we proceed in this course. Having said that, let's move to our next board where we are going to introduce the concept of how these keys are going to be shared, right? This was the question from this was the question from many people yesterday also, and I see that this is a problem that people are getting. This is a problem that people do not understand how these keys are shared because we haven't told you about them. But first thing, if we want to do the asymmetric encryption, right? What is the meaning of asymmetric encryption? We have two keys here, right? We have keys generated, which is public key here, private key here for Anjali. Similarly, same thing for HDFC Bank server and the same thing for certificate authority. Now, you all know that if Anjali wants to verify something which is sent by HDFC Bank or the certificate authority, she is going to need the public key of the certificate authority, right? She is also going to need the public key of this HDFC Bank server, and you know that what exactly this server certificate contains. This server certificate contains some information like what is the domain name of HDFC Bank, the name, where HDFC Bank work, where it's its headquarters, and so many things. Along with that, it is going to put its own public key here. Similarly, in the root certificate, which is required to decrypt the certificates, right? It is going to include the public key of the certificate authority, which is M, right? So how exactly you are, just wait a minute, guys. So how exactly you are sharing the public key, because public key sharing is important. As I mentioned that we have two keys, public and private in case of asymmetric encryption. And I mentioned that public key is for everybody. It is going everywhere. So what is the method of sharing that public key? The method is only the method is actually the certificates. Every certificate contains a public key for that person. So if HDFC Bank server has its certificate, it is going to have the key or the public key of the HDFC Bank. Whenever Anjali says hi to HDFC Bank is going to reply with its certificate. And the certificate is going to contain value K. You can argue with me that this Mr. Intruder can also get the K. Let it be. That is perfectly fine. And why I'm saying this? Because public key is for everybody. HDFC Bank doesn't differentiate between Anjali and Intruder. If Mr. Intruder is also saying, hello HDFC Bank is going to give him the certificate, which contains all his information. He's going to say that Mr. Intruder, before talking to me, please authenticate me. He doesn't differentiate between Anjali and Mr. Intruder. If Anjali is saying, hello Mr. HDFC Bank, she's also getting the certificate. And what that certificate contains a public key of HDFC Bank. It is as simple as that. Right? So how we are able to distribute public key? Through simple means, through certificates. How Anjali is getting the certificate authority key? Because Anjali has root certificate installed in her browser. Doesn't matter if she is using Chrome, if she is using Firefox, those browser comes with these certificates installed. The root certificate of well-known certificate authorities like DigiCert. It is as simple as that, right? So by this point, you should understand how we can distribute public key through certificates. But now the question arises, how we can distribute shared key? Now the question arises, why do you want to distribute shared key? Because till now we have just talked about asymmetric encryption, and in asymmetric encryption there is a need that public key should be everywhere. But now in case of symmetric encryption, what is required? In case of symmetric encryption, if suppose Anjali do not want to do asymmetric encryption, she says, I have a shared secret with me, which is this value S, which is again a key. What I want to do is I want to encrypt my message with this secret key. I do not want to encrypt them with public key or private key. Now here is the problem. The problem is if HDFC Bank wants to decrypt this message, it should have this value S. It should have its value S so that it can pass this value or the key value into the message so that it can get the decrypted content. So in case of symmetric encryption, you are going to need this shared key or secret key across both, right? But now the question arises, how we can share this secret key on this unsecure medium, which is internet, with this HDFC Bank server. There are many methods which can do that. But now, as we have read asymmetric encryption, as we have read symmetric encryption, we are going to see that how we can utilize these two technologies side by side to get a complete picture, to share the shared key also. So let me clean the board. The problem is we need to share the secret key of Anjali, which is S. I will be drawing that to HDFC Bank. So here we have the secret key of Anjali. We want that HDFC Bank server should also have that so that he can decrypt it, because now Anjali is interested in doing symmetric. But what is the main motive? Why Anjali is switching from asymmetric to symmetric encryption? Because he could have easily done that. If she wants to send the packet to HDFC Bank, she can just encrypt the message with the value K. What is the value K? K is the public key of HDFC Bank. And if she encrypt that, only HDFC Bank is going to decrypt it because it contains the corresponding private key. And you know that if something is encrypted with K, which is the public key of HDFC Bank server, it can only be decrypted using its private key and not even this value K, right? And that is the relationship. So now the question arises, why, if we have encryption mechanism in place, why Anjali want to move from this asymmetric encryption where we are using two keys to say single key encryption, which we call as symmetric encryption? And that is the question, right? And that is the important question to talk about. The question is, if we can do everything with asymmetric key encryption, why do we need symmetric encryption? And here is the reason for it. As I mentioned, these two keys, public key and private key, which we generate for an entity, for any entity, maybe HDFC Bank, maybe certificate authority, maybe Anjali, all this process or the process of encryption using these two keys is CPU intensive. And now you must be thinking that, come on, Vishnu, that is perfectly fine. We have so much CPU power in current days, in current environment. But believe me, this is really CPU intensive. And why? Because in public key and private key, as I mentioned, we are using mathematical functions or pure mathematics. And if we use mathematics to encrypt or decrypt, or mathematical function to encrypt and decrypt, then basically it is going to be computer intensive. And believe me, there are so many files. If basically Anjali wants to communicate to HDFC Bank server or Google or anywhere, right? Those files are really big. And if you are encrypting those files using public key and private key or asymmetric key encryption, it is going to be a toll on your CPU. You do not want to do that, right? So here is the second option. You have the second option, which is secret key or which is symmetric key encryption, right? You can argue with me that why don't we have here mathematical function? We have, but most of the thing here in the symmetric encryption is basically the replacement of the, when we do encryption in symmetric key, right? Or symmetry, whenever we do symmetric key encryption, there is the rearrangement of the letters. As I mentioned, A to C, A to B, and there is so much rearrangement of these letters. We are not involving much mathematical function here when we do symmetric, and that is why it is CPU. It is CPU's friend as compared to asymmetric encryption. So it means that although both methods are strong form of encryption, right? But the first method requires a lot of CPU, the second method requires less CPU, and that is why we are confused which one to use, right? So the solution is the middle path, that we are going to use both. Why both? And this is very, very important. To do the symmetric encryption, we have a basic problem. The symmetric keys need to be at both the ends, but we do not have that. But in case of asymmetric encryption, there is no problem, because anyhow, if we are exchanging certificate, the public key is going to be with everybody. So we are pretty sure that Miss Anjali got the public key of HDFC Bank server, which is K. And how she got it? Because whenever she is saying hello to HDFC Bank is replying with the certificate, and in that certificate, she is going to have this value K. So along with these two key values, X and Y, which she has generated, she got the value K, which is the public key of HDFC Bank server. It is as simple as that. But now the question arises, why we are deviating from the topic? We want to do the symmetric encryption because it is processor love that, right? So try to understand. The problem with the symmetric encryption is that we do not have this key S. So now what I'm doing is I am taking this value K, right? This was my value S. I am taking this value K here. I am passing it through my encryption algorithm, which is AES. Now this is encrypted value. And by this time, you should come to know who can decrypt this. Can Mr. Intruder decrypt this? No, absolutely no. Why not? Because to decrypt it, Mr. Intruder is going to need a key which is corresponding to this public key. And what is the key corresponding to this public key is L. And that L is the private key of HDFC Bank server, right? And we do not share private key with anybody. It means that only HDFC Bank server can be able to decrypt it. So this message, which was your S, which was encrypted with the public key, it is going to reach over the internet. Nobody can decrypt it for sure. Nobody can see this key for sure, right? It is going to reach here, right? And now HDFC Bank is going to pass it through L, same algorithm, AES, and it is going to get the secret value, right? So try to understand the logic, what we are doing here. We are using asymmetric key encryption to share the key of symmetric key encryption, right? Let's talk about more. What do we need for symmetric encryption? We need shared at both sides. How we are providing it? We are providing at the destination this shared value by using the asymmetric key encryption. How? We can say that if I want to send a message to this HDFC Bank server securely, I just need to encrypt my secret key with the public key. And if I can do that, this message is going to be securely over the internet, and only HDFC Bank server is going to decrypt it and nobody else, right? So to begin with, if we have two parties, the communication is going to happen via asymmetric key, where we exchange the keys, right? This guy knows the public key of here, this guy knows the public key of this guy, so both knows the public key of each other. And now if this guy want to send something, he is going to encrypt it using his public key, right? And what we are sending here, we are sending the secret key using that. So we use asymmetric key encryption to share the secret key so that we can do symmetric key encryption, which processor loves. It is as simple as that, right? So guys, this way, basically your keys are shared on an unsecure medium, which is your internet. And this is really, really important for you to understand that whenever we are going to read this SSL or TLS, those are actually the same thing whatever I have just explained. So believe me, till this point you have understood most nitty-gritties of SSL or TLS protocol. You don't believe? We are going to see this on Monday. If you don't get this board much, and that is the beauty of this recording or the videos, just try to play them again and again unless you get something out of it. Just sit with a piece of paper, just try to build your logic, Just see the video again and again, and believe me, you are going to get it, because the concepts are really simple. What we are doing here, we want to share the secret key. How we are doing that? We have already we already knows asymmetric encryption, and using that asymmetric encryption, we are using the sharing the shared key so that we can do symmetric encryption. It is as simple as that. Okay, so now this is the way, and I'm not saying that this is the only way. There are multiple key sharing algorithms like Diffie-Hellman. We are going to talk about it also when we talk IPsec. So do not worry about it. But by this time, we should understand that how we are sharing the secret key. Okay. Now let's talk about the concept of intermediate CA, because when I'm going to showcase you everything on browser, when we try to reach HDFC Bank, there are some nitty-gritties you need to understand before that, and that is why I'm introducing the concept of intermediate CA right now. So from our analogy, right, we had Mr. Village Headman, Mr. Ashish were our businessman, and in the same village we had the supplier. What village headman was doing, he is certifying that Ashish is Ashish and supplier is supplier. He went to Ashish and said that there is no issue with the supplier, you can trust her. Village headman also went to supplier to certify that Ashish is a good businessman and you do not worry about your money. But the problem is, village headman has to do more works, right? He's a busy guy. He's an elected person who is a village headman now. He has so much responsibilities. And what he is doing, he is just certifying many people, right? So what he want to do, he want to delegate his work to others. And that is why he appointed Mr. X. And maybe Mr. X, his right hand, right? He believes him. So now just try to understand, Mr. Village Headman trust Mr. X, right? Now Mr. X is going to Ashish and saying, Ashish, do not worry about the supplier. She is good. Ashish is going to say that is fine, supplier is good, but who are you, right? I know village headman, but I do not know you. Why should I trust you? Then this guy is saying that do not worry. Mr. Village Headman trust me a lot. And if he is able to prove that, if Mr. X is able to prove that Ashish, Village Headman trust me. So what is happening here? Village Headman trust Mr. X, right? Ashish trust Mr. Village Headman. So basically there can be a trust relationship between Ashish and Mr. X. That is perfectly fine, right? Because Ashish believes Village Headman and Village Headman has a trust on Mr. X. It means that Ashish can also trust Mr. X. So he can simply Ashish can simply obey that, okay, that's perfectly fine, supplier is good, and similarly Mr. X can go to supplier and then say that Ashish is a good person, he can be trustworthy, right? So again, supplier knows village headman knows Mr. X, and that is why Mr. X is known by supplier. So try to understand, there is a chain of trust. And similar chain of trust you are going to see in real environment also, right? Village headman has to do a lot of work. He just cannot certify everybody. So he is appointing many persons for doing that. And now Mr. X is one of that person. Everybody knows that Mr. X is the right hand of village headman. It means that if we can trust Mr. Village Headman, we can trust Mr. X also. And now Mr. X is certifying, right? Or distributing certificates. So whatever the task done by Village Headman in terms of certifying people, now Mr. X is doing it. Okay, let's understand what exactly happened in terms of certificate authorities and intermediate certificate authorities here. Okay. So what is going on here? Just try to understand that this guy, this is your village headman or the root, right? And the organization name suppose is DigiCert. It is having its own public and private key. No problems with respect to that, right? Similarly, now what DigiCert is doing is, DigiCert has a lot of work to do. So, and there are so many people on internet who are coming to DigiCert, please sign my certificate, please sign my certificate, right? So many requests he is getting over the internet. But the problem is, try to understand, if this DigiCert is online, there is a high chance, high risk associated of losing these keys. Maybe there is an attack, there is going to be an attack on DigiCert specifically to get the private keys of this DigiCert. So most of the certificate authorities which are the roots just do not make themselves available on the internet. They say, okay, I am in charge of certifying, but the problem is, if my private key goes out somewhere or it gets compromised, it is going to be a problem for the complete internet, because many of the entity certificates are signed by DigiCert, and if its private key is compromised, your internet security is going to be compromised. So for that, Mr. DigiCert is saying that although they have a lot of other work to do, and because they want their private key to be secure, they are saying that I am not taking any certificate signing request online. I am going offline. I want to secure all my keys, right? But in the process, what he's doing is, he is saying that GeoTrust is the guy, which I trust, means DigiCert trust GeoTrust. It is same as Mr. X. This is your village headman. Village headman had a lot of work to do. That is why he is appointing Mr. X. DigiCert wants to secure its keys. That is why it is saying that I am going to say that if you take the certificate from GeoTrust, that is as good as taking the certificate from me, because I am going to sign the certificate of GeoTrust, right? So what is going on? This GeoTrust is going with its public key and a lot of the documents with him, and DigiCert is going to sign this. It means that this certificate which GeoTrust has is signed by DigiCert. It means that GeoTrust is the intermediate certificate authority which has the trust of DigiCert. It means that if GeoTrust starts signing certificates, it is as good as signing certificate from DigiCert, because DigiCert trusts GeoTrust, right? And now the important point is, because DigiCert is saying, do not come directly to me. We have a lot of intermediate certificate authorities. Just go to them, just talk to them, and you will be good. And they will be assigned a certificate for you, right? So guys, although I can see that there are questions, there are hand raises, but let me complete whatever I want to complete in today's session. I will be here for 15-20, half an hour after the session to just answer your question. Okay, thanks for your cooperation. Let's try to understand what is going with this HDFC Bank now. DigiCert is saying, do not come to me, and GeoTrust can sign your certificate because I trust GeoTrust, right? So what is happening? HDFC Bank is going to intermediate CA instead of going to root CA. They are going to intermediate CA, and intermediate CA is going to sign the certificate. Now, the certificate which this guy got, this certificate, is not signed by DigiCert. It is signed by intermediate CA. This is interesting, right? But here is the problem. There could be many intermediate CA, right? And how this certificate is going to be verified by Anjali? Do you remember, guys? If you want to verify this certificate, if Anjali is saying hello to HDFC Bank, HDFC Bank is happily replying that here is my certificate which is signed by GeoTrust. Anjali is saying, okay, let me see my browser that whether we have root certificate of GeoTrust or not, whether I trust GeoTrust or not. And here is the problem. There are many intermediate CAs in this world. So it is going to be very difficult for this browser to have all the root certificate or trusted root certificate of all the intermediate CAs. And then Anjali is not going to have this GeoTrust root certificate here. And if she doesn't have that, it is going to be problem, right? But Anjali's browser is going to contain the root certificate of DigiCert. But suppose in a case that it should not, it doesn't know GeoTrust at all. So she is going to say that Mr. HDFC Bank, whatever you have sent the certificate, it is a problem. I do not trust intermediate CA, which is GeoTrust. HDFC Bank is saying that please do trust because GeoTrust is eventually signed by DigiTrust. Okay, then Anjali says that is perfectly fine. Send me the certificate of GeoTrust as well as DigiCert also along with it, so that I can trace the path back to root certificate. So believe me, guys, when we are going to open this HDFC Bank server certificate, right? HDFC Bank server is not saying sending just one certificate. It is sending the certificate of GeoTrust. If I name them, this is suppose my certificate number 1. This is certificate number 2. This is certificate number 3. So when Anjali says, hello, Mr. HDFC Bank, HDFC Bank server is not just sending the number 3. Number 3 is what? Number 3 is signed by GeoTrust private key, right? So it is sending the GeoTrust certificate also, which is certificate number 2. Certificate number 2 is what? It is signed by root CA, and along with that, it is also sending this one. Certificate number 1. One certificate contains all this information. I will be showcasing you that. Now the trust can be completed, right? Because Anjali can straight away say that, okay, HDFC Bank server is signed by number 2. Number 2 is GeoTrust, and GeoTrust is signed by DigiCert. And DigiCert root certificate I already have, maybe, right? And I can verify. If I can verify DigiCert, then basically there is a trust chain of trust. If I trust first, I can trust 2. And if I trust both of them, I can trust this also. It is as simple as that. This is the way how trust work, chain of trust work. And most of the times, these guys are offline, and the certificates, whatever you see from google.com, from hdfcbank.com, you are going to see an intermediate for sure. Let's see whatever we have learned on our web browser. Okay, so I am opening a web browser right now. Just wait a minute, guys. Here is my web browser. I think you can see that. Let's open HDFC Bank page. Here you go. And here you are going to see this little lock, right? We are going to open this little lock. So what actually happened when I did that, right? What has happened? I am Mr. Vishnu sitting here in my home. Here is Mr. HDFC Bank. I just said hello to him, and they have sent me a certificate. Where is the certificate? I want to see that, right? So I'm opening it. Here you go. It's saying connection is secure, certificate is valid, it is verifying it is already verified, and that is why you can see the everything is coming up and running. So if you see this thing, I'm not sure how to increase the size of it because, okay, so let's bear with that. So we have the certificate. We have the certificate from HDFC Bank right here. If we go and check the content of the certificate, you can see here that the certificate is issued to www.hdfcbank.com, and this certificate is issued by GeoTrust. If I draw that hierarchy, this is your HDFC Bank, right? This is your GeoTrust certificate authority. It means that HDFC Bank has gone to GeoTrust with the certificate signing request, and GeoTrust has replied with the certificate, which you are seeing right here. It is as simple as that, and this certificate has validity also. That this certificate is valid till 2023 5th month date. Sorry, 1st of May. Okay, so if you go and see more contents regarding this, so I want to show you the details of it, right? In these details, if you can see, and you are free to do all these exercises on your own because you can always see the certificate, right? We have serial number, we have signature algorithm, who is the issuer, valid from, valid to, subject is www.hdfcbank. And if I showcase you the public key, which I always say public key is already included. So guys, this is the public key. Public key of what? This, sorry guys. This certificate belongs to HDFC Bank, and that is why this public key belongs to HDFC Bank. It is as simple as that, right? Most important thing which we were reading from last couple of days, right? That is your thumbprint. Thumbprint is actually your signature of certificate authority, this one. How this must be generated? If I showcase you again, this is my GeoTrust, this is my HDFC Bank. HDFC Bank is saying CSR. Now this GeoTrust, what it is doing, it is calculating the hash out of this value and encrypting using its private key, and that is how this hash is generated. This is the little thing on the certificate which I was showcasing you with the yellow color, right? You can all see that these are actually happening in production. Whenever we go and talk to HDFC Bank, it is going to give us a certificate. But now the concept of chain of trust, is it valid in this scenario also? To know about it, let's talk about certification path. Okay. Let's open certification path now, which is right here. If I explain you, what is this? This is the certificate of HDFC Bank, which was signed by GeoTrust, and GeoTrust certificate was signed by DigiCert. Okay, it is as simple as that. So there is a chain of trust from DigiCert to HDFC Bank. Now, if somebody is here who wants to verify this certificate, maybe Anjali, what she is going to get? She is going to get everything in the certificate. She is going to get first of all HDFC Bank certificate, right? Which is going to contain public key of HDFC Bank. She is going to get GeoTrust certificate also, which is signed by DigiCert, right? It means that she is going to get the public key of what? GeoTrust. And this certificate is signed by DigiCert, and she is going to get that this certificate also, which is under her root chain or trusted root chain. What is trusted root chain? Basically, Anjali's browser or my browser is going to have DigiCert installed in a database which is known as trusted certificates, which this browser trusts, and I will be showcasing you. But before that, let's open these individual certificates also, right? We have just, whatever we are just seeing right now HDFC Bank certificate. Now let's have a look at GeoTrust certificate. If I double click on this, it is going to give me another certificate. And now let's see the content of this. If you see the content, that it is issued to GeoTrust. Now we are talking about GeoTrust certificate issued by DigiCert. And absolutely it should be the case, because we are having HDFC Bank here, then Geo in middle, and then we have our DigiCert here. We are talking about this certificate. This certificate is signed by DigiCert, and that is why we are seeing it right here. If you go to the certification path, details are going to be, obviously every detail is here, like the signature and everything. And now let's see about the certification path. Here you are going to see that certification path, we have only two, this certificate and DigiCert, because this certificate is signed by DigiCert. Now let's talk about another certificate, which is your DigiCert, which is also there, right? If you double click on DigiCert here, this is one of the most interesting certificate you are going to see, because it is issued to digital certificate. It is issued by digital certificate. What is the meaning of it? If I talk about DigiCert now, right? DigiCert is going to have its public key. It is going to have its private key, right? And as I mentioned, that you need to have the public key everywhere so that you can verify all the certificates which are signed by DigiCert. It means that DigiCert should have its own certificate. And how it is going to create its certificate? It is signing its public key and all the parameters, like its name is, and whatever the parameters are, with its own private key. If you use your own private key to sign your own certificate, then that certificate is known as self-signed certificate, right? You must have heard about it. In these kind of certificates, the issued to authority is going to be same as issued by authority, right? And this is actually the root certificate from DigiCert. If you go into the details of it, we are going to see the public key here. And what is this public key? This public key is actually the public key of DigiCert here. If you check the domain name, right? If you check the subject, its subject is DigiCert. It is as simple as that. But now this is as I mentioned, that there is a trust store of the browser where I put all the certificate which I trust. And believe me, this DigiCert certificate is going to be there. If you don't believe, let's see that. I am going into the settings as mentioned by Ashish yesterday. What I'm going to write here is, I'm going to write certificate. If I go into the security section, if I go down, if I do manage certificates, and here if I go to trusted root certificate authorities section, which I trust, and sure enough, you are going to see DigiCert here. This is the one. This is part of my trusted root certificate authorities. It means that this browser inherently trusts this certificate. So it means that whatever the certificate signed by it, GeoTrust, right? We have a trust, we have a chain of trust from DigiCert to GeoTrust, from GeoTrust to our HDFC Bank. It is as simple as that. If you do not get it, don't worry. Just rewind the video and you will be getting it. But I request you guys to just have a look at it on your own time. Whenever you have time, just see these certificates, just try to understand them, right? But these are simple concepts, and believe me, if you have that knowledge, whatever we have been talking from last 3-4 hours, it is going to be, it is going to be very easy to understand. Let me open the board now, right? And that is why the whole sole purpose of including this intermediate CA, although I could have done with same root certificate and this one, but this is going to be a problem when you go and understand the remaining things. Just try to have this thing in your mind, that the root CA just nothing but your village headman, the topmost authority. Then GeoTrust is Mr. X, whom he was trusting. If you go and see this board, very simple, right? Now let's talk about our next board, and I have showcased you all this thing, although I should have explained you this board first, but that is fine because we have seen all these things, right? So this was the certificate from HDFC Bank, guys, which we just saw. Okay. And then here, I would take another 5 to 8 minutes of yours. I have specifically mentioned coffee is required here because now what we are going to discuss, we are going to see how confidentiality is different than authentication, right? In terms of keys, which keys we are going to use. It is going to be an interesting discussion. So guys, I need everybody, I need your concentration for next 5 to 8 minutes because these are important. If you want to understand the difference between confidentiality and authentication in terms of keys, what keys we are using, this is the board for you. Okay, so the topology is simple. We have Mr. Rahul, we have keys here, we have keys here. I haven't mentioned here, so let me write. This is K and this is L. Okay. First thing first, let's talk about confidentiality. What exactly happened in case of confidentiality? When the whole sole purpose of confidentiality is if I am sending a message, it should reach as it is, not as it is, it should reach to the HDFC Bank server. And if somebody is able to capture this message also, nobody should able to get any information out of it. It is the meaning of confidentiality, right? How we can achieve it? Now we have these two key values, right? Mr. Rahul knows K. What is K? The K is the public key of HDFC Bank server. And if Rahul wants to send a message to HDFC Bank server, he just need to encrypt the message with HDFC Bank public key, right? Why? The reason is if you encrypt something with public key, you can open only with private key and not even with the public key also, right? Similarly, if you encrypt with L, you can only decrypt with K. But now here, just try to concentrate. We are using destination's public key to encrypt the message so that only destination can decrypt it, because destination is going to have this L value and nobody else. This is your confidentiality, and you are achieving it by encrypting this message using any algorithm using public key of the destination, which is K. It is as simple as that. I am writing here, if you are using confidentiality, what you are doing? You are encrypting using public key, right? And you are decrypting using private key, of whom? Both destination. It is as simple as that, right? But now consider an example where we talk about authentication. Authentication goal is just to authenticate myself to anybody else, right? It doesn't mean that I want to provide confidentiality also there. And that is why I take the example of this bank check. If I want to authenticate, if I want to say that this check is signed by me, I will write something that is known to only me and me only, right? And that is why I signed it. And it is believed that whatever I sign, nobody else can do that. But it doesn't mean that this sign cannot be seen by anybody else. But definitely, to whom I am giving this check, they are going to see this sign for sure, right? So I am not doing encryption here at all. My whole sole aim is to put something on this check so that anybody can verify that it is from me. I'm not encrypting it. I just want to authenticate myself. Right? Now just try to understand. If Mr. Rahul wants to authenticate himself to HDFC Bank, suppose he has this key is public key and this key is private key, right? And of course, HDFC Bank server can know the public key of Rahul, which is publicly available, which is X. No problem with that. What is going on here? Mr. Rahul wants to authenticate himself to HDFC Bank server. Now what he is doing, just try to see. He is encrypting the message or message hash with its private key. Guys, this is private key now. He is encrypting with its private key because private key is known to him only. Right? He can encrypt the hash or the complete file. You know all these things. He is encrypting the hash value. Suppose he wants to authenticate to HDFC Bank. Right? And when this message reaches here, HDFC Bank knows the public key of Mr. Rahul, and that is why he is going to encrypt. If the hash value is going to match, then basically he can think that, okay, the message is from Rahul because I can able to decrypt it using Rahul's public key. It is as simple as that. So in case of integrity, what we are doing, in case of authentication, what we are doing, we are encrypting using private key, right? And we are decrypting using public key. So you should understand the difference. The key rules are changed here because the purpose is changed here, right? This is my destination, and with whom? Here we have source, not destination, because source wants to authenticate himself. I haven't included certificate authority because certificate authority is just another way to authenticate. It is going to add more security because now we have that village headman also, but the concepts are going to be same. In case of confidentiality, you are going to encrypt your message with destination public key so that destination and only destination can decrypt it. In case of authentication, you are going to encrypt using your private key so that anybody can decrypt it using public key, because this is as good as your signature. Anybody can see them because the goal is authentication here. Having said that, although I had in my mind to combine everything in today's class, what everything? Confidentiality, integrity, and authentication. We know all these things pretty well now. Even the non-repudiation, believe me, we have understood it, but I haven't introduced this term. And there is going to be your weekend homework. Means if you start thinking about what is non-repudiation, it is going to be great. Believe me, we have covered the non-repudiation part also. Right? We are going to combine all these concepts in our next class, which is going to happen on Monday. And that is going to be interesting session because whatever you have done till now, the 4 sessions, you have given your 4 hours into this course, right? You should see that how everything is going to be combined to make a complete security solution. And believe me, when you combine them, this is as good as your TLS or SSL. Having said that, I am open for questions now. Mr. Ashish, you can unmute people, or just I could see some hand raised. Yes, Niranjana ji, please ask your question.
Hi Vishnu.
Hi.
My only question was like the picture 3, like
Mhm.
2 pictures before, when DigiCert is issuing a certificate to GeoTrust,
Mhm.
and then GeoTrust does this. So the keys that are going to be available, uh, like for the public, is like in DigiCert there will be M,
Mhm.
and in GeoTrust certificate it should be O, and then HDFC should have K, right?
Perfect. Yes.
Like when DigiCert signs its own certificate, it signs with N, if I'm not wrong.
Absolutely yes.
So since GeoTrust has the key M, it can decrypt that.
Absolutely yes.
Okay.
And even this
Then
M is this M is already there in the certificate, right?
yeah,
The
right.
M is there in the certificate. So GeoTrust doesn't need to ask that what is your key, right?
Okay.
But it is the good way that because this key could be of anybody else, right? So root certificate should be here also. Which root certificate? DigiCert. So and GeoTrust should trust that the root certificate
Okay.
is going to contain M. Here we are going to have M, and with this M we can decrypt the certificate sorry, validate the certificate. Okay, after decrypting it.
Yeah.
So just try to understand in terms of authentication, we do not need the private keys of anybody, right? And
Okay.
that is the beauty. So people get confused here that if DigiCert goes offline, then how we are going to do that? You do not need DigiCert to be online. You just need its public key, and that is it, or the root certificate. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Vishnu,
Now question
in
from
that
Anand
case,
ji. Yeah, please go
Vishnu,
ahead.
in that case, it just compares the hash of root certificate which GeoTrust had and the certificate which it receives later.
Could you please repeat the question, sir?
It's a follow-up question which what Niranjana asked, right?
Mhm.
So the intermediate CA will already having one root certificate of DigiCert, right?
Yes, you are right.
Okay. Okay. Then where it gets authenticated or it's get authenticated saying that I'm the right person. This certificate is right to use.
Okay, you got the point that GeoTrust is going to get the root certificate. You got this point, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Now let's
Yes.
talk about this certificate. So GeoTrust is going to this root CA and saying that you go offline, doesn't matter, but sign my certificate, right? And he is
Correct.
saying, I am Geo certificate, my name is this, my name is this, something, a lot of things, right? And here is my public key also. This guy is going to give him the certificate. So this guy is going to have two certificates, one root certificate from DigiCert and one certificate which is its device certificate, right? Or its server certificate of GeoTrust.
Understand. Yeah.
Perfect. Anybody else? Anand
Hi,
Durairaj.
Vishnu. Yes.
Please go ahead.
Okay.
Guys,
Yes.
please raise your hand and I'll call you. Okay?
Yeah, Vishnu, can you please go to the last slide, last board?
Absolutely. Where we talk about confidentiality and
Authentication.
yes. Okay.
So here, my doubt is, so here you said that first, in order to authenticate, it will be encrypted with the private key,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And since the Rahul's public key already available in available on the internet,
Yeah.
why can't the intruder can decrypt that using that
They
public
can.
key?
That is what I'm saying. It is just your signature. Intruder can see your signature. What is the problem with that? This intruder can also know that you are Rahul. What you are trying to prove here to HDFC Bank that you are Rahul, right? What is the problem if
Right.
intruder also know that you are Rahul? That is fine.
Okay.
Perfect. Anybody else? I think Anand.
But Vishnu,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry. But the intruder can forge himself as a Rahul and he can speak with
How?
HDFC Bank.
That is why that is the whole sole point, because this hash was encrypted using Rahul's private key, right? This intruder is not going to have the Rahul's private key. He can say that he can do it with own private key, right?
No, no. What I've understood is, see, Rahul is going to, during the authentication, whatever information he's sending, he's going to encrypt it using the his private key,
Yes.
and that can be decrypted using Rahul's public key.
Not key. He is encrypting the hash, right? Suppose he want to send hello. Just try to understand. Question is good. Suppose he is trying to send hello to HDFC Bank. This was the file he wants to send, right? This was the message. So he is passing it to his SHA value. He is generating the SHA value, right? And now he is encrypting this SHA, only this value, 101, suppose, right? With its private key, which is Y. It is going to get some numbers which are not readable to anybody, right? If somebody is using the public key of Rahul, he is not going to get the private key of Rahul. He is going to get this message or the signature. You are getting my point? So this intruder can hack this message. He is going to apply the Rahul's public key. So he is going to get the hash value, or he can see the signature. Now say, what is your doubt? But he cannot sign on the behalf of Rahul because he does not have the private key.
Okay, got it. You mean to say he's not, whenever he's going to decrypt the message using the public key, that time he'll be getting only message, not the other information which is Rahul having. That is
absolutely
the private key.
Means private key is, I haven't said anywhere in this class or anywhere any class that in any form, whether encrypted, non-encrypted, this public key is traveling. No, sorry, private key is flowing. No, absolutely not.
Okay. Now, one more question, sorry.
Yep.
Let's say intruder is also having its public and private key.
Sure, okay.
Right. So, whenever the message is coming from the Rahul, intruder can forge himself as a Rahul, removing that whole message, and he can put its own message encrypted by his own private key, and then send it to the HDFC Bank, and HDFC Bank can revert to the intruder.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sir, that is why there's some form of certification is required that this is intruder, this is Mr. Rahul. And that is where that village admin is going to picture, right? And that is the same problem we were trying to solve. I just gave you an example that authentication can be happen on the value of your whatever you have Y, right? And similarly, suppose this guy is saying that I am Mr. Rahul, suppose, right? And he encrypt using its own private key. Suppose you are saying this, right? And send it to it. But now HDFC Bank server is going to think that this message is from Rahul and not from this intruder. So what key it is going to use? In Mr. Intruder key or Mr. Rahul key to decrypt the message? I'm talking about public key. It is going to use public key of Rahul, right. And then the message, then the results are totally different, right?
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Anybody else? But in terms of HDFC Bank or the bigger authorities, we are talking because we even do not know so many things, and that is why the certificate authorities come into picture. So I could see another hand raised from Harshal, I believe. Yeah, Harshal, please go ahead.
I just asked the question.
Oh, you just asked. Extremely sorry. So guys, first of all, just say your name and then ask question. Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, Vishnu. This is Murli.
Vishnu.
Yes,
so
Murli.
the same. Yeah, hi. This is Murli.
Yeah, Murli.
Yeah. So authentication as well as for the confidentiality, right? So the same private and public key are used?
Yes. but their role gets changed. If you want to see the role,
Yeah, that I get it. Yeah. Okay.
Perfect.
Vishnu, Rajiv here, one question.
Yes, Rajiv ji, please.
And one more follow-up. Sorry, one more follow-up question. You talked about, in here, what in this slide, right? Everything is private and asymmetric key, right? So you talked about using a shared key. That is still being used in?
First, that is still being used. See, I am not saying that if you use a symmetric encryption, the use of symmetric is gone, right? They both complement each other. And when I teach you, or when I talk about SSL, you are going to see that first we start our communication, authentication, everything in asymmetric format, but asymmetric format is CPU intensive. So we switch over to the symmetric encryption. We are going to see that.
That means, for the confidentiality part, that is the change of the messages, right? That transaction happens using the symmetric encryption.
The data flow, the data which flows between the Rahul and HDFC Bank server, it is going to be using the symmetric key encryption.
Okay.
Okay.
Vishnu, Karthik here, maybe I missed the other part. So how in the second case, in the authentication, how HDFC server will have the Rahul's public key?
Because it is there in the certificate. Maybe HDFC Bank server also can ask a certificate from Rahul. I will be showcasing you this because till now we just talk about one-way mutual authentication. One-way authentication. There can be scenario in which HDFC Bank say that Mr. Rahul, present your certificate also that you are Rahul, right?
Okay.
So basically, if you see the solutions which Cisco is building, like SD-WAN, right? We have controllers there which talk amongst themselves, like vSmart, vManage, and there is going to be mutual authentication between them. Okay. So there is going to be certificate at both the side. But a good question. Anybody else?
Yeah, one question, Rajiv here. So the website example that you showed, right? That once we open the website, right, and we are presented with the login screen, right? Till the time we log in, right, we start entering our user ID and password, right? Can you relate it with the flow, and what, once I type in the website
Definitely,
address,
sir.
right?
I will be relating that flow because the thing which I showcase you on browser is actually TLS, transport layer security. When we are reading the transport layer security, I will go step by step what exactly happening. Do not worry about it. Okay.
Sure. So basically these key exchanges, private, asymmetric, right? In one by one flow, we will be able to relate.
Absolutely. That is where we are come across this TLS handshake. First hello will go, then HDFC Bank server will reply, and so many things. Means there are 6-7 steps, and I will be showcasing.
Exactly.
Don't worry. But these are the basic building blocks. But believe me, if you combine, if right now you can open a paper on SSL or anything, any site, if you go and read about SSL, everything is going to be crystal clear for you. You do not need me for that. But definitely, because it is in the curriculum of this of these sessions, we are going to introduce, because we now have a solid understanding of the concept. We can now learn anything like IPsec or SSL or ASA or anything, and we will be showcasing you how these 4 classes are important in the remaining sessions.
Sure, thank you.
Vishnu, this is Shubhadeep.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, so first part of the question is that when you're saying authentication and private of sorts, encrypt using private of sorts, and decrypt with public of sorts, that is HDFC.
Yes.
Okay.
No. So public of sorts. Yes, correct. You're right.
So it will also happen vice versa. Like Rahul will be also getting authenticated when he sends messages, or let's say I'm putting something in HDFC.
All the times I have authenticated HDFC Bank server, first time I am saying that let's authenticate Rahul also to HDFC Bank, right? So that is why I'm using authentication. Just try to understand, just leave the diagram also. If you want to authenticate yourself to somebody, right? How you are going to do? You must be having something which differentiating yourself with somebody else, right? Here in this case is my private key, and maybe in your case, maybe your digital thumbprint, or basically you have something, password or something like that, right?
Okay, so that will act as a certificate. Like for me, HDFC, I'm authenticating using the certificate.
You can say, I just gave an example. Certificate is just a way to authenticate yourself. You can
Way
use
to
this your private key also to authenticate yourself. You can use your password also to authenticate yourself. Okay.
Okay.
And
Okay.
yeah, the other part of the
And
question.
the other is that in this one, where is the role of CA? If I let me put my understanding, you just correct me, that when I'm getting a message from SDFC, so there is a certification authority certificate already, right? So I'm able to know this is SDFC, and then I am taking the public key of SDFC and getting the inner message, right? That is
Yeah.
asymmetric. Inside asymmetric, there's a symmetric encryption and decryption, right?
Yeah.
Am I getting the
You are
point
getting the
correct?
point, but what is the question here?
No, I was just checking whether there is
Okay.
both of the things we are using, right? Asymmetric as well as
You are right.
symmetric.
You are right. Absolutely, you are right.
Okay.
Anybody else, guys?
Vishnu Sandeep Lamba this side.
Sandeep ji, yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, Vishnu, you give an example of the HDFC bank server. So my question is, I have seen that scenario in my real experience that whenever there is if suppose there is someone is man in middle, and it also shows us same kind of page where we land on the HDFC server. So how we will identify that it is a man in middle or it is a HDFC server?
See, if you have written the name correctly there, right? If you are writing HDFC Bank .com, right? You will be getting the IP address corresponding to this, right? Using DNS.
Yeah.
And let's say you are reaching to this HDFC Bank site. It is going to give us the certificate back. And that is why the role of certificate authority is so much important here, right? What is happening here? In this certificate, it is exactly written what is your domain name. Yeah, HDFC Bank, right? So browser checks that you initiate a request to HDFC Bank, and now you are getting getting back a certificate of HDFC Bank. If those are same, then basically I can do the other check. Otherwise, I will say that whatever, suppose you are doing a communication with hdfcbank.com, and now you are getting back hdfdbank.com. Suppose domain name is going to be different, right? Whatever the certificate you are going to get is also going to have the domain name of HDFD Bank, right? Not HDFC. And if that is the case, there is the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is that we are having the same domain name.
How you are going to get the same domain name?
Even if I have the public IP, I can assign a hdfcbank.com to this public IP also over the internet. Same thing man in middle can do.
Oh, is it? You can do that, Miss, and you can be if you have a private kind of a network, right? If you have a private network, then basically you can distribute the whole host file, and you can insert this host file into this machine and say that hdfcbank.com is not at this IP address but at my IP address. So basically you are attacking the DNS request itself, right?
Yeah.
You can do, but do you think that you can able to insert your DNS records into Google DNS server or somewhere else? If you can do this thing, then basically there are more things to worry about than this, I would say.
No, I couldn't do, but I have seen that the domain name is almost same. For
almost there is a difference.
Yeah,
there is a difference between HDFD and, as I mentioned in my last class also, previously even I could see instead of ICICI, one I was there. This is totally different domain name, right? And here basically you can see a complete website of ICICI Bank. So you need to be more vigilant when you type something on this, and you need to be seeing that this button is up and running, this lock.
Okay, so you mean that for the authentication purpose, that the domain name and the certificate will have the same DNS.
Yes, there are so
Same
many
as-
things. There are so many things. If you can, I haven't told you many things. If you can see, we have domain name there. If you have seen that where this company is located, so many things are there, right? Along with the public key.
And also same domain name and certificate could not be assigned to
You are right.
anyone else.
And that is where your certificate authority comes into picture, right? They are not going to give the same domain name certificate to anybody else, just like Intruder, right?
Okay. And one more thing,
Yes, please.
during this session, could you share that? Could you show us that the packet flow, that this is the part of the integrity and confidentially on the
I'll try to do that.
Wireshark?
The problem is we need to decrypt those messages, although we can do that pretty easily. Yes, we can showcase you the flow because generally
Yes.
I could see only going hello from client to server and thus from server to client, but the remaining messages are going to be encrypted in TLS. But we can showcase you, no problems.
Okay. And last one, in the confidentially we encrypt the payload, and in the integrity we hash the.
It is more
encrypt the
beneficial
hash value.
if you do this way. It is more beneficial if you do this way. But in case of TLS, we are going to see where we encrypt where, and I haven't completed the picture also, so I will be showcasing you that.
Hmm.
Anybody
Thank you.
else? No problems. Sandeep ji.
Hi, Vishnu, yes.
You go ahead, please.
Yes, okay. So when we talked about a root certificate and the intermediate certificates, right? So you showed the diagram where Rahul as a person has already installed in his own browser has few DigiCert and another intermediate certificate list, and the authority is already in there.
Yeah.
To just confirm that, right? So the thing is, I wanted to ask, so let's say when that person, let's say Rahul has come online, as we know that the GeoTrust already has a root certificate with it, and that is of the root certificate of the DigiCert.
Yeah.
So is it necessary for Rahul to at least make the first communication, just the first communication, with the DigiCert, or
No. There is
or
no
just
communication. There is no communication at all with this browser and this DigiCert. DigiCert is down, suppose.
Yes, right. So let's say Rahul is new, has just switched on, or it's a new laptop, or has
Absolutely
a
new
new.
laptop, no problem with that. But whenever you need to install a browser to get the HDFC
Right.
Bank, and this browser is already contain all these things. I haven't put anything with respect to DigiCert in my browser. It is already there. It is already there.
It is already there.
Yeah.
Okay, so it only needs, let's say if the browser tries to confirm the key, or let's say tries to confirm the certificate, it only needs to get to the GeoTrust rather than look for the DigiCert, because
No. He is not
GeoTrust
going.
already has.
He is not even going to GeoTrust also. And the reason
Okay.
is this HDFC Bank server contains the GeoTrust. See, what actually it is going. Okay, tell me. Means if I understood you properly. Suppose he can talk. He can talk to DigiCert. He can talk to intermediate CA. What he wants to talk, according to you?
Just the we are talking about whether to confirm as it is a HDFC server or not. So to confirm that, we need a public key.
It is
In the
already
earlier
there. It is
diagram, we
already
need
there.
to-
Whatever it is, HDFC Bank is going to send. See, it is not sending now one certificate. It is sending the certificate of GeoTrust and root cert. It is already having.
so-
And this
so
GeoTrust
let's say-
certificate is having the public key of GeoTrust. So it doesn't require that.
Okay, you're saying that in DigiCert browser, in the browser, the DigiCert already, the DigiCert that we have installed within a browser, it already has a certificate of the, the public key of the GeoTrust also.
Yes,
Is it so?
yes. So if
Okay.
I was showcasing, means when I was showcasing you this HDFC Bank certificate there, right? I double click
Right.
on GeoTrust. So it gave me the GeoTrust certificate. It was there. It was right there.
Right, yeah. I just wanted to understand whether, this is something that we are, it's like a running environment. So it's like we have, may have logged in once or twice or many times. I was just talking about the first time communication in more sense.
Yeah.
So the same way that we do in SD-WAN,
Yeah.
we have a whitelist, and we do have to make a communication with V1 to
Yeah.
make the confirm the authentication. Even in fact, the vManage has the whitelist, but it is vManage is there just to validate it.
Yes.
But the first communication is always with the V1
Yes.
because it is a new device.
Yes.
So I just want to confirm with the same
No, this
idea.
is
with-
slightly different than that. This is so there the environment you are creating, this is public. So that is what we call it. There's a public key infrastructure. It is already there. Means whenever we are building these browsers, right, we are going to import these certificates there. When we are building this browser and putting, whenever anybody can install these browsers, right, Safari or Chrome,
Right.
these certificates are right there, at least the root certificate, and those are installed in the trusted root certificate authorities there.
All right, they are
Okay.
pre-installed as the kind of a main
You are right.
authoritative.
But in case of your SD-WAN environment, if you consider that now there is a root certificate authority of Cisco itself, right?
Yes, yes,
Right. So you are creating that environment, and that is why you need to do some starting activities, you know.
Okay, all right, all right. So in this DigiCert or the pre-installed browser, it will have the public key of both DigiCert and GeoTrust, that will be M and O. So in order to in order for Rahul to
Even it doesn't know it doesn't need the public key of here O and P whatever, right? Because he could have the certificate of GeoTrust also, so to have that. But try to understand, if this HDFC Bank server is sending a certificate which also contains the public key of the GeoTrust, so he doesn't know the root certificate of GeoTrust, because at the end of the day he will come to know that GeoTrust is signed by DigiCert after seeing the certificate.
right. I mean that's completely understandable. Let's say it's for HDFC server. GeoTrust trust is the first one or the only authoritative company who is actually providing the certificate.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's understandable. It is just in order to understand whether the user is able to
I got that.
understand. Yeah.
Thank you so
Okay,
much
thank
for the
you.
wonderful questions, guys. It's again
Hi.
okay. Please do ask
Hi,
questions.
Vishnu.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Murali. So say if someone is kind of hosting some suspicious website, like as you said, right? So instead of hdfc.com, so SD, if something, some small change, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, will the trust, right? I mean the CA validate it, and
CA won't do anything. CA is just I think that CA is going to say that this domain name is anyhow different. Now there is you should be vigilant enough that you are typing something right. That you should be.
Still, I mean, he will issue the certificate.
They will issue that certificate for sure.
Okay.
Right, but sometimes these companies are pretty good in terms. For example, ICICI Bank, they are also taking the domain name ICICI 2 times, 3 times, right? So they are pretty good with that. But having said that, guys, we are already having 3:30, and I have a hard stop also. So thank you so much for being a wonderful audience, and see you Monday, right? Enjoy your weekend. Maybe have a beer, have a whatever you want to do on weekends, whatever you do. So let's see everybody on Monday. Have a nice day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vishnu. Hope you have a good weekend too.